Hey, it's Phil Stacy, once again, Executive Sports Editor here at the Salem News. Welcome to another edition of Bandied About, our Salem News slash Gloucester Times sports podcast. We focus obviously mainly on the high school sports that we cover, but we'll mix in some college and some pro thoughts. With me, as always, Assistant Sports Editor Matt Williams and the newly married Gloucester Times Sports Editor Nick Giannino. What's up,
Right.
gentlemen?
They're getting used to the ring here, but looks good.
Yeah.
Feels good.
Yeah, it looks good on you, kid.
I had to sneak in one more podcast here before I head out for the honeymoon tomorrow.
That's good. Hopefully you can get some new maggots so you can get rid of that Lakers one behind you.
That ain't going anywhere. Although I
Yeah,
might have to take it down if they disappoint me again tonight.
yeah, well, it is what it is. All right, let's dive right into it. We're about a month, about halfway through the spring season. We've seen our first set of MIA power rankings. Everybody has certainly played enough games for us to get a handle on them. Willie, why don't you steer the SS Minnow today and take us where we're going?
Yeah, what do you guys want to talk about?
Oh, look, I think that's a good starting point, right? The rankings.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
What are you
Um,
seeing up there in Cape Ann, Nick? Pick a sport and go with it.
All right. Well, both the softball and baseball teams got off to really strong starts, but they have each dropped a couple of games now. Actually, I think Gloucester baseball's only got the one loss, and do they have one or two? God, now I'm drawing
Eight
a
and
blank.
one,
It's been a
just the one.
whirlwind.
Yeah, 8 and
Yeah, just
one.
the one. And the girls have lost two straight, but tough competition for those teams. So they're both in the top 12 in their respective divisions. Division three for Gloucester baseball, Division three for Gloucester softball. The Lady Fishermen sit at 9-2 now, and the men baseball team sit at 8-1. So great starts to the season for those two. They're going to be able to lock up officially clinch a playoff spot here in the next couple games, I would imagine. And for the baseball team, they got a young pitcher. I talked about her before, freshman Abby Noble. She's kind of been leading the charge for them in the circle, and at the plate, they're getting production up and down the lineup. Even some of these games that they lost, I think the game they lost the other day, they put up 7 runs. So they're getting the offense. Emma Carapachosa stands out to me. She's got some power. She's been hitting really well, but it's a lot of different girls contributing, and it's a mix of underclassmen and upperclassmen there. And then the boys, we've talked about their three pitchers. Willie, you put together the first statistical leaderboard for the North Shore and Cape Ann yesterday, and all three Gloucester pitchers were right in the mix there in terms of strikeouts and innings pitched. Giacomo Martel, Braden Francis, and Nico Alves. Nico Alves being the outlier as a sophomore. The other two are senior captains.
Nick,
So
I know you
Gloucester
wouldn't really
baseball.
have a point of reference for this, but Willie, I'm wondering if this Gloucester team has the capability to be the best one since that, I'm going to forget what year it was, but they beat St. John's Prep in the North Final. I'm probably guessing what, 12 years ago, 15 years ago.
2009. Yeah, I mean, Gloucester's had some really good teams, especially when Brian Lofato was coaching. I mean, I know
Yeah.
like Brett Moore, who's pitching for Gordon now, was like really good. They had a couple of kids that went to Salem State that had pretty good careers. So I guess that'll be determined by postseason success, right? I mean, we'll
Mm.
see, but certainly Gloucester has has won the NEC South at a few times in the past, let's call it 5, 10 years, and I'm not sure they're going to be challenged in the Lynch this year. I know there was some raised eyebrows when Gloucester was the team that moved down this year, where everybody knowing what pitching they had left is like, really, this is the team that's going down. But
Yeah.
I guess that's what the math dictated, or whatever. So, long story short, I think they certainly could be, compared favorably to that team. But it certainly remains to be seen. The postseason success, I think, will ultimately dictate, that sort of legacy stuff.
Yeah, I just think of that team as being such a monumentally good team, and they really hit their stride in the postseason. They had a couple of real horses on the mound too, if I remember right, and could hit the ball. So I didn't realize it was 16 years. Wow, I was thinking maybe a dozen or so.
Yeah. Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah, I mean, and
But yeah,
that's Division One too. So
Right, right,
not
right.
that
Yeah,
like
exactly.
not
Division
that
one.
D3 is like any easy peasy shakes there. I mean, St. Mary's up there at the top and teams like this. Geez, Wakefield's always very good at baseball. North Reading, of course, at 7-1 here. So I mean, not that it's going to be an easy road for them, but the team that they beat had two professional athletes in one, Pat Connaughton, on television last night, separating Giannis from Tyrese Halliburton's father, interestingly
Peacemaker.
enough, and also Mike Yastrzemski too. So who's playing the outfield for the San Francisco Giants these days. So I doubt anybody in the MIAA has got two professional athletes. Never mind in Division Three in the future. So
yeah,
Does,
so
does
in that
Danvers
sense,
or
I guess it'll be
Swampscott
an easy
Willie have
road.
a chance to make a push here in the second half? Speaking of those Division three teams, I mean they're right. I know they're each maybe a game or two above 500 at this point.
What's that now?
Well, either Danvers or Swampscott, do they have a capability to give themselves a push to move forward up the seedings in Division three, where they're like what I think one is 5-4 and the other 6-4?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Swamps get in the NEC Lynch, they want to get 10 wins, get in the tournament, kind of see what happens. And, maybe if they can beat Gloucester the second time, kind of challenge them a little bit. Danvers is in that mix in the NEC Dun where everybody kind of has two or three league losses at this point. So I know their first priority in Danvers is to win the league, right? To try to win their home games, hold serve at home, and be on top of the NEC Dun, and then kind of whatever happens in the power rankings happens, right? I mean, you can't really control it. So I think for all the teams in the NEC done, Masco, Peabody, Marblehead, Danvers, Beverly, the focus is really on trying to win the league. And then, wherever you end up in those power rankings, you end up and you go play and you try to play your best. But, it's such a statewide thing. The South Shore teams, you can't control, the strength of schedule really, especially once the season begins. So I think, for Danvers, I know they're really excited about where they're at. I know they've been playing much better ball lately. They started out 0-2. They've won five of their last seven. They're in first place right now in the conference. So I think their focus, and I think for the rest of the teams too, is really on win the conference first and then see how the power rankings shake out second.
Right.
yeah. I mean, Gloucester's 8-1, and they're only the 10 seed. A lot of good teams ahead of them in Division Three. It's pretty crowded at the top. A lot of one-loss teams. Obviously, you got Weston unbeaten. But we're getting down the home stretch here, like you said, Phil. We're pretty much at the midway point. So we're going to start to see what some of these teams are made of. As we come into May.
And the three game weeks for baseball, those are the challenging ones, right? Because I think, with the exception of Gloucester, there aren't a lot of three pitcher teams out there. I mean, even St. John's Prep hasn't gone
Right.
real deep into their rotation. I do not see three reliable guys on that team at this stage of the season. Now, maybe they'll start to show as they get deeper into their schedule or whatever, but with baseball especially, that those 3 game weeks, and if you start getting rainouts in 4 game weeks, extra inning games, that's when things really tend to get interesting. So that's really going to be kind of that chess match. Who's pitching against who's getting maximum rest, and who's shifting things around to sort of try to get the best matchups for certain guys out there on the mound in some of these best on best contests.
Were you surprised? I mean, I think by and large we can all agree that we usually figure that the teams from St. John's Prep are going to have a pretty good ranking. A, because normally they're very good, and B, just because of the strength of the schedule they play, whether it's in the Catholic Conference or some of their non-league teams. I was surprised yesterday looking and seeing that Peabody was ranked 2 spots ahead of St. John's Prep. Did that surprise you,
Yeah.
really?
I mean, we'll see if it lasts. I want to say there was a time or two last year when Peabody was ahead of St. John's, and then they ended up finishing 16-4 and finished I think like with a preliminary round game, and St. John's moved up, right? So I mean, we'll see if it lasts. The thing with St. John's right now is even their wins have been close games. That they had a 7-5 game with Cambridge. I think there was another game that was only a 1 run win. So like they're not winning by a lot right now. The schedule's good. But you look at the top here. I mean, Taunton number one, Braintree number three, King Philip number four. It's not like hockey where four of the top five of the Catholic Conference, right? So I mean, they do
Yeah.
have three teams in the top 10. It looks like, but it doesn't carry you quite as much as it does in some of those other sports. You got to win some games. Um, but I sort of, I think that's like a funny little thing. Like, hey, nice feather in Peabody's cap, right? Like, hey, for recruiting purposes or whatever, like, hey, look, we're doing a little bit better than them right now, but I think it's a small sample, and we'll kind of see if that lasts to the end of the end of the season. I'm not sure. I want to say they were like one or two rankings last year where that was the case too, and in the final rankings, it just kind of didn't hold up. But when you compare it to say basketball, right? Where Peabody's had a significantly better record than St. John's and still been ranked below them, it is a little bit different than that.
Okay.
Yeah. If we just stick on the Cape Ann real quick, I should mention Manchester Essex baseball because they've kind of hit a little bit of a groove. They did lose to Newburyport yesterday, competitive game 5-2, but they won four straight before that. So they're at 500 on the year after a 1-4 start. And I just did a player of the week in our paper yesterday, and Connor St. Laurent has really been turning it on for them. He's only a sophomore, and he's been hitting close to 500 now in the season. I think he's 12 for 25. Last update I got. A lot of RBIs, a lot of knocks. So he's been playing well, and they're a really young team. Not a lot of seniors on that team. They're starting multiple freshmen that are playing well right now. So that's a good sign for them moving forward because that's a proud program, a team that's had a lot of success in the past, and they've kind of been rebuilding now for a few years. And it's nice to see them get some production from what's proven to be a strong underclassmen class. So
What else we got, Willie?
there you have it. Um,
What do you see?
yeah.
Anything you guys see softball wise?
I mean,
What's
I
that?
think
I
it's
was a
interesting.
little,
Go ahead.
I was a
No,
little
I didn't
surprised
hear Willie.
Marblehead was low. I expected Marblehead to be a top four team even with the one
Yeah. Yeah.
loss,
What were they,
but
14, I want to say?
yeah, and I know like kind of the Masco loss is probably sinking them a little bit. Like we'll see if Masco kind of puts some more wins together. Kind of a shocking result, really. I mean, Masco started out 1-5. They were
Yeah.
giving up like 15, 16 runs a game, and now all of a sudden they've put together four straight shutouts and they shut out Marblehead. Like I don't know what has gotten into their pitcher, if she just found her off speed stuff or she's just developing. I mean, she's only a sophomore, so
Well,
she's
it's
like a tough
interesting to
one.
me when you look at the conference as a whole. I think you have six teams there that can really make some hay and are capable of beating one another. I mean, you mentioned Masco, like you said, they've been on that great run. Marblehead is right there. I think Beverly is 7-2, is playing up to capabilities. They'd like to play a little better, I would think, but 7-2, you can't sneeze at. In fact, I think they were the highest ranked team we had out of all of our North Shore girls softball teams yesterday. They were what, 13 in Division One? Peabody can't be counted out. I know they lost some big players from a year ago, but it's still Peabody. They still have a great coach and Steve Lemazny. They know what to do. Same thing over in Danvers. Any team that has an Ali McCarty type player is going to make things happen during the season. And Nick, you mentioned Gloucester is coming along and playing well too. So I mean, when you have six strong teams out of 10, and I'm not even mentioning Swampscott. Swampscott could fare well as well. That's something that makes almost every game more important than it already is as a conference game because one bad inning or one miscue, say it's a walk or an error or a base running mistake where somebody overruns a base or tries to take an extra base where they shouldn't or gets caught in a rundown, any number of scenarios, that could be the difference between not only where you wind up in the league standings, but where you wind up in the power rankings. Maybe it costs you a home game because of one mistake you made in a game in the last week of April. That to me makes things really exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's very interesting. I think, and those games where people get tripped up, right? It gives everybody else the chance to catch up, right? I mean, Marblehead was in the catbird seat and, now Beverly's sitting there saying, "Ooh, ooh, you lost." So that means if I hold serve and I beat Masco, now I kind of have that leg up, right? It's sort
That's
of,
right.
nobody wants to admit to scoreboard watching, right? But I think all the coaches, when things are jumbled up this much, it gives them a good reason to read the area roundup in the morning and kind of see what everybody else is doing and keep tabs on things. And when everybody's paying that much attention, I think it's good for the game.
I mean, we've been fortunate the last few years with, certainly PBD had a great run. Um, reaching the state final. What was that, Willie? 3 years ago now?
Yeah.
3 years ago. Marblehead, what a fantastic playoff experience. A year ago, best season ever in history, reaching the state semifinals for the first time. This year, it seems like there isn't one specific top dog, so to speak, which, as a neutral observer or a fan or whatever you want to call it, that makes it more exciting, because you never know what's going to happen. There aren't a whole lot of gimmies out there. Just the fact that, as you mentioned earlier, Masconomet beating Marblehead, that's exciting. It might not be great if you're Marblehead, but like as a casual viewer or someone who just likes to watch good softball or whatever it is, that's exciting because it means like this is going to be a race down into the final week, the final days of the regular season to see who comes out on top and where things shake out in the conference. And we don't, honestly, we don't get that a lot in the conference in most sports. Usually there's a pretty good split between the haves and have-nots. So to have this many teams competitive in softball this spring and capable of beating one another, I mean, the crown is up for grabs. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and they beat Danvers too, Masco did. So I mean, it's
That's
not like a
right.
fluke where like lightning struck one day. They've beaten two really good teams now, which means that all the other really good teams can't afford to like look past them, right? I mean, it's not like you can't chalk it up to luck if it's sort of happened twice. So
Are there
I,
any
I think
girls on the team that played either on the state champion soccer team or were part of that undefeated girls basketball team over the winter for the Chieftains?
I don't think so. No, I
Even
mean,
more impressive then, if that's the case.
yeah, I mean,
They're
yeah, it's a young team. I mean, the catcher's a freshman, the pitcher's a sophomore. They got a couple other freshmen they're spotting in. So, but again, like it all comes down to the pitching, right? And I mean, it's like a light bulb's gone off. It's like the popcorn kernels have popped for her, and that's great, and that's great for the future for them too, because they got her for
yeah,
2 more years.
that's right.
Yeah.
What are you guys seeing on the lacrosse scene?
Um, I saw a tremendous game yesterday. I think we can all agree that probably the majority of at least regular season games we go to a lot, we go for various reasons. It might be to, you're working on a future story or you want to get out and see a team you haven't had a chance to see yet, or it's what we call a crossover game where we have a couple of teams in our coverage areas that we cover, whatever. But I would say the great regular season games are usually in the minority. Can we agree on that? Like a great
Yeah.
regular season game. I saw a great regular season game yesterday. St. John's, BC High. According to the power rankings, they were 2 and 3 in the state. I mean, come on, if you don't think St. John's is number one, that's bananas. But oh, the rankings are what they are. BC High was undefeated. St. John's had just the one loss last Saturday to Staples, Connecticut. And this was a great game, and not for the reasons you might think, where it's like, oh, it's high scoring, back and forth, blah, 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 blah. No, it was like an unbelievable defensive game for both teams. Both goalies were fantastic. Defense did a lot of locking up, and each squad got their share of shots, but they really had to be judicious with them in terms of like getting themselves not only into scoring position, but finding a way to beat the goalies because both guys were on. Matthias Duplessis for St. John's with 13 saves and TJ Emsing for BC High with 16 saves, which you don't often see two goalies with double-digit saves at this high a level. Went to overtime. St. John's wins. I think that's now, what, 37 in a row against mass opponents. But easily could be a preview of the state final. And hey, I'm not exactly breaking news here. They've met 3 of the last 4 years for the state final. But terrific regular season game. We don't get those often enough. Um, I want to mention, I think it's been a great year so far, at least for half a season for Masconomet. Usually I feel like lacrosse is a sport where like The same teams that are good are going to be the same teams that are good for most of the time. St. John's, Marblehead, Pingree, Marblehead's gotten off to a little bit of a slow start. They're 4-4, but they could probably be 7-1, to be honest with you. They've lost 3 games by a combined 4 goals. So the teams that are normally good are still good, but Masconomet, they're leading the conference right now. They're 8-2. They're steamrolling teams. I mean, Nick, you just said to me yesterday, like they beat Gloucester 22-5. You're like, wow, that's a high score. I'm like, yeah, they can
Yeah.
they can pour it on, and it's not one guy like, oh, I got 8 goals, or I got 8 and 10 points. It's 16 different guys in the scorebook yesterday. So their backups were getting in and scoring,
Jeez.
and their young guys were scoring. And what I find to be really interesting is they lost their goalie, Jack Wheaton, to an injury a couple of weeks ago. And first time goalie, Michael Kenny steps in, and he's gone 3-1. He's been great going for them. So they're really clicking on all cylinders. They've never won a Northeastern Conference title since they've come into the league 6 years ago. I would have to look up the last time they won a Cal title, but I know it wasn't anytime recently. So they've been a really good story. Now, they still have to play Marblehead again. They still have to play Swampscott again, which, as we mentioned before in the podcast, they went to the Division 3 state semifinals. I'm sorry, Division 4 state semifinals. They've been playing some really low defensive scoring games, and I think they're starting to find their groove a little bit now. Their best is probably yet to come, but I see it as a 3-team race now in the conference. I know Swampscott's in the lower division, but they count all the games. So I think the team that calls itself the champion wants to be the one that says, well, yeah, we not only won, our division, the Dunn or whatever, but we beat everybody. We had the best record of anybody. So should make for a very interesting May next 3.5 weeks as those teams battle it out.
Yeah, and in my area, you touched upon Gloucester getting smoked by Masco. They've been up and down, but they're battling. I think 4-5 on the season. That's a team with some young players, not a real deep bench. But like I said, they're going to be fighting for a playoff position all season. Probably going to have to get in with that 500 record. They're well outside the top 32 right now, but right there in terms of the overall record.
Yeah, they're going
And
to have
shout
to
out to
win the games like the games that could go one way or the other. They're going to have to find a way to beat the Winthrops and
yeah,
Salems and the Sauguses of the world and hope that they can upset, whether it's a Peabody or a Danvers or something like that. They're going to need a couple of
exactly.
upsets to get in.
Yeah, and they've had some games where they play really well and some games where they don't look so good. So it's tough to figure them out. I don't think they really have a go-to scorer. Last year they only won 4 games, but at least they had some consistent options on offense. Now it's kind of different guys chipping in each day. But I will say their goalie, Jaden Chipperini, has been very good. He's keeping them in games. So yeah, definitely shout out to him. And in Manchester, Phil, you saw right before the overtime game with BC High in the prep, you saw what, a 7-6 game between
Yeah,
Manchester
7-6
and
game there
Ipswich. And
too. Yeah, I've seen two
yeah, and
good
that
games this
was
week. Uh,
yeah, and that was the Hornets' first loss. So they
First
were 7
loss,
and 0
yeah.
to start, lost that one.
I'm really impressed with the way they play defensively, especially when you consider that their own goalie,
Yeah,
Connor Dixon, is out with an injury, and you have Aaron Crompton, who's never played a goalie before. I mean, he's a hockey goalie, but he
right.
steps in and he's got quick hands, he's got the movement, he's learning the position on the fly, and I thought he did a really good job um, playing against Ipswich. You know, you guys have both seen Ipswich play lacrosse over the years. Small school, they don't have a ton of guys, whatever, but they always seem to have firepower. And they have it again this year, with Finn Wright. I think he has like 34 goals already, or 31 goals maybe. Vin Winter, who we know is the football quarterback, he played lacrosse up until middle school, didn't play as a freshman or sophomore, has picked it back up now as a junior, and he's got 20 something goals. Luke Weil, who, like Wright, is a left-handed guy, causes problems for defenders with that left hand. He can score, he can facilitate. What they lack in numbers, they certainly have know-how, and they're 6-2, and they're playing very well. They've split now with Manchester Essex. They've got a big one with Newburyport on Friday. Newburyport, very powerful team led by Josh Field, the former Hamilton Wenham coach. He's built up a nice little powerhouse there with the Clippers in Cape Ann League play. But
Yeah, in Manchester, you mentioned the goalie situation. It looks like Connor's going to be out for the year. He broke his thumb, so
Oh,
he had
okay.
to get. I believe he had to get surgery, and he's going to be out. He's still with the team, serving as a captain, and he is only a junior, so he'll be back next year. But yeah, Crompton's filling in great. I think the two guys on attack, Charlie Thurlow and Jack McCavanagh, who I don't believe played in the
Yeah,
Ipswich
he
game.
didn't. He was at Decca Nationals the other day, so he
There you
wasn't at
go.
the game
So
Monday.
he's a guy they certainly could have used in a game
Yeah,
like that.
and the
Small
Vallejo brothers,
stature.
I think they're both pretty good players
Who's
with
that?
Walker and
And Turner. Yep.
yeah, Turner. Thank
Yep.
you.
And they play different positions.
Yep,
One of them's a long stick.
yep.
But yeah, they're getting contributions from a bunch of different guys too. And if Crompton can keep growing in that position in net, that's going to be huge for them. But like you said, it's nice to have someone that has a little experience playing between the posts in hockey. And just speaking with Wes Chittick, the former Danvers coach who took over Manchester this year, and I think he probably told you the same thing after the Ipswich game, but he seems to be pretty fundamentally sound for not having been thrown into the fire like that before as a goalie.
I like to tell Wes he's a good guy, even though he's a Sixers fan. So
Oh yeah, Sixers. That's right. That's right.
yeah.
He's a Philly guy.
And we should segue into the girls here. I mean, Manchester with a real good win over Ipswich the other night. Was that also 7-6?
7-6. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they
Eight.
tweeted it out wrong at first that Ipswich had won 7-6. And I said, they're so close, but they got it done. That's a team that beat them earlier in the season, Ipswich is, and
12-6
uh,
early. Yeah.
yeah, it wasn't really that close.
No,
And
no.
Manchester had some bad performances. Early on in the season, I went to the game against Hamilton Wenham. I think they lost like 15-3 in that one or something. And they had a 3-game losing streak there for a while, but now they're really picking it up, coming into their own. I think they've won 4 in a row or something like that. They had a full week off during April vacation, and Coach Nan Gordon said they really just were able to regroup, and she thought it was good for them, coming off that Hamilton Wenham loss and another loss, and they're starting to find their groove. It's also a younger team, a lot of firepower lost to graduation from last year, but they're getting girls that have really stepped up, and that was a huge win for them to beat
Hey, I was going
Ipswich.
to say you beat Ipswich. I mean, Ipswich still is number one ranked power seed in Division Four.
Right.
Into the state finals back-to-back years. They got a ton of talent over there. So to
Yeah.
beat them, that's a marquee win for the Hornets.
Yeah, they won that, and then they come out and they beat Georgetown the very next day, 18-3. So they're clicking right now on all cylinders. Their only losses are Ipswich, Portsmouth High School, which they threw on the schedule, a really competitive team. That was a 3-goal game, and then they had the blowout loss to Hamilton Wenham, and since then they've been nails. So
We've got some other
kudos to
teams
them
that are
too.
playing well too. I mean, Hamilton Wenham's playing well. I think they're 5-2. And I want to say they were ranked, was it six in Division Four, maybe?
I got the
Uh,
rankings right here. Let's see, girls across. Yep, number six,
yeah,
five
number
and two.
six. Okay.
And
Yeah,
Ipswich is still top dog in that division. Manchester's at 9. Hamilton Wenham at 6. You got Pentucket at 7,
pretty
and
good.
Ipswich, like I said, in the top, even despite the loss to Manchester. So
And
some
Willie,
good
I know
Watch
you've
out.
caliber
written about
rotation.
Peabody a few times for our roundups. They're what, 6-2, 7-2 now? I mean, they and Beverly are kind of going back and forth. Beverly, I want to say, is 8-2 now. Um, so they seem to have kind of broken away from the pack a little bit, as we would have expected in the Northeastern Conference. And then you have Fenwick, which is 9-1. They're playing fantastic.
Well, I would watch out for Swampscott too. I mean,
Hmm.
they're 7-2. They're sitting there at 12 in Division Four. They're being dragged down by an opponent rating that, is probably based on Salem, Winthrop, some teams like that. But I would watch out for them. They're very good. They can score with anybody. They got a pretty decent goalie. If that ends up being like a 12-5 matchup between, say, Hamilton or Manchester and Swampscott, I think that could be a last possession wins kind of game. I would not count out the Big Blue by any means, and I think in any of those crossover matchups where Swampscott plays Beverly, plays Peabody, plays Marblehead, those are the kind of games that could really potentially affect the standings. In fact, I
Yeah.
Swampscott's visiting Peabody Saturday afternoon. There's going to be a little bit of a fundraiser situation for mental health awareness. The green, all the green tape and green headbands on the field as they do once a year every year. So
Yeah, they're really
that
good
should
about doing
be
that.
a
That's
great
always good.
lacrosse game. Weather's supposed to be really good. If
Saturday
people want to
afternoon, right? That
see,
got changed from 10 to 3, I want to say.
yeah, it's an SAT day. So if anybody that's got early games on the schedule, those are probably all wrong. Most everything's probably going to be in the afternoon. As I understand it, it's an SAT day.
Gotcha.
Good to know.
So yeah, I mean that's sort of long story short. I don't think we can overlook Swampscott at all. Especially coming out of that Lynch, like the strength of schedule. We know what's going to happen there, but I don't think that it's going to affect the power ranking. But I don't think it affects the kind of team that they are. And I mean, we saw what the Big Blue Boys did with that last year in their tournament, right?
Yeah.
So. I think Swampscott Girls is a team that's like flying under the radar a little bit, but could potentially challenge those Ipswiches, Hamiltons, and Manchesters in a big way. And then for Peabody and Beverly, I mean, the tough thing is just being in those high divisions against some of those super powerhouse teams. I mean, Beverly's won 7 in a row. They're starting to get their new players involved. They have arguably the best goalie in the conference in Maddie Reynolds. She's up around 450 career saves now, which is a school record. So she's a potential game changer, game stealer. And Peabody had a great non-league win against Billerica the other day that I think is really helping them in the power rankings. They beat Billerica. They didn't just beat them, they doubled them up 14-7. Was their most complete game of the season. Their defense is really finding things, and we know what their big three can do up front, right? So we knew scoring wasn't going to be a problem. I think it was just a matter of some of those new defenders and midfielders sort of getting on the same page, getting into game shape. They didn't have a super friendly schedule early on in terms of the number of games between days, the number of days between games, the number of challenging games that were sort of, they'd have like two less challenging games and then a challenge. It was just hard to kind of get a rhythm, right? It was sort of a start stop, stall the engine type of start, but now they're finally going, getting some rhythm a little bit, so that's good. And obviously, we'll probably talk every week, but those two games where they played Beverly inside of a week at the end of the season will almost certainly decide the conference championship, and maybe they'll split them and it'll be a split. Who knows? But those are certainly two games that everybody's circling, and I think Peabody plays Ipswich at some point too, which
Yeah,
should
they
be
do.
Yeah.
another tremendous test. I
Yeah.
know Ipswich got the better of them last year in a
Yep.
pretty close game, so that should be really entertaining as well.
Let's give a
Yeah.
shout
And
out to the
I just
Marblehead,
want to
which
say
has
real
really
quick.
played well since I think they started out 1-3,
Yeah, they
but
won 4 in a row, I believe. It's
yeah,
4 in a
they have
row.
won 4 in a row, including a big 1-goal win over Peabody, right?
Yeah, good win for them. I mean, I know Peabody felt like they made a lot of mistakes and kind of, didn't play well, but Marblehead never backed down, never went away, played them very physically, and got the better of them, and that seems to have sort of ignited things for them. And they've got some really good firepower, whether you're talking about Forbes or Gillette or Camos. I mean, they're really good, and they got a really good goalie too in Molly
Molly
Bullard,
Bullard,
who's
yeah.
another game changer. So I mean, they certainly have all the pieces to
These
put
are
it
girls
together and
too
be
that have
dangerous.
these are girls that have been playing at the varsity level for a few years now. All these girls are coming back, at least some of the names you mentioned. So
Yeah, a lot
that's
of
what
lot of
building
college
towards this.
players, a lot of experienced players, and obviously a really good coach. So I mean, Annie's up around 178 wins now, which I mean that might be the all-time record for the area. I mean, the sport's only 15, 20
You
years
know
old. I
what?
can't
You're right.
think
That
of
might be.
anybody that it's been coaching that long. I mean, Dennis Desroches won a few games in his day, but I don't think that many. I can't think of any other coaches that have even stuck around for the requisite number of years to get up close to 200 in girls lacrosse anyway. So obviously tweet to us if we're mistaken. I mean, maybe if you took all the different stops of Manny Lopes and added up all the different ones, maybe he's be close, but certainly not at one school.
Yeah, you're right. I know Allison Tibden's climbing that ladder pretty quickly though in
Yeah.
Ipswich.
Yeah, but she's been there what 5 years? I mean, she was in high school. It feels like 10 minutes. I mean, she might have been in high school the first year Annie coached.
Yeah, yeah, she could have been.
In
So
all
it's just a
honesty, I think
timing
you're
thing.
right.
But
Yeah.
so that's just remarkable. And good for Marblehead that they've been able to hold on to her and make some noise there. It's interesting. We used to have such great battles between like Marblehead and Ipswich used to play in the tournament in the North,
Yeah,
right? And I sort of still miss that stuff. Obviously not going to see that now because of the
Right.
statewide format and everything. But
And the divisions.
interesting to kind of, yeah, there are more. I mean, yeah, in those days there were only three divisions. Right now there's four, so that makes a difference too. But sort of interesting. Let's shift quickly here to our blind ranks. So we will blind rank repeats. So I will throw you five teams from various things, and we will say whether we are talking about the World Championship, right? So it could be NBA, Stanley Cup, World Series, Super Bowl, or the state championship, or the regional. We'll say for college purposes, who is most likely to repeat. So obviously, all five of these teams will have won their respective championships last year, right? And so we'll see who is most likely to repeat from one to five. I will start out with the Florida Panthers.
Uh, 5.
Putting them at 5 as well.
Toughest trophy to win. It's an absolute grind. There's a lot of good teams out there. Um, I didn't have them win in the first round, so I give them credit. What are they up 3-1 going into
I
tonight?
think it's 3-1. Yeah, I was actually looking at the stuff earlier with the different series because we did the picks, but yeah, I think they're
Yeah, I think it's just too much of a crapshoot. I think Carolina can beat them in the East. Um, I don't know if Toronto really has the gumption to do so, but uh,
When's the last time a team repeated as Stanley Cup champs?
Pittsburgh about 7, 8 years ago.
To Tampa,
Okay.
or are we like not
Oh,
counting
right,
the
right. Yeah, yeah. I guess,
bubble?
yeah, Tampa, I guess. Yeah, yeah, Tampa.
Tampa. True.
That's right.
I know
Well, I
like
guess
the
it does happen more often than we
that
think,
that
but
that was in, yeah, one of those was the bubble, so that was a
Yeah.
little bit, people said it was a little fake, or they had to play Montreal in the finals, which was kind of a joke. Montreal never would have made the finals in an open, in the opener. It was sort of like Maine going to the College World Series when all they had to beat was Holy Cross and BC, type of
Yeah,
thing.
right. Right.
Um, Anyway, no, but interesting for me, Florida, the fact that they've been to back-to-back finals is like an accomplishment in of itself.
Huge. Yeah.
What almost makes it harder, I think, to repeat, because now a lot of those guys have 3 years of tread on the tires, not just two, right? Because that's a really long run 2 years ago. The second team I will throw at you is Hamilton Wenham girls tennis.
I'll say 2. It's been a little bit of change over there, but when you've won 3 in a row, the precedent has been set. Um, and the girls who have stepped in know what's expected of them. Yeah, you're focused on the day to day. You want to be, if you're playing Amesbury today or Pentucket or whoever, you want to win that match. But it's kind of like the Dodgers, like, yeah, you got to beat the Cardinals tonight, but you're looking at October and what the pitching matchups are going to be and how we're going to get set for, this, that, the other thing. I think that's how Hamilton, Wenham can approach things. They're just so good. They're so talented. Um, clearly, Joe Mara has done a remarkable job. He's getting remarkable players, but then he's putting them in the right spots and exploiting matchups when needed. So yeah, 2 is good, I think, for me.
yeah, I'll put them right in the middle. I think last time I looked, they were still undefeated on the season, and Cape Ann League pretty good for girls tennis. Linfield might be one of their biggest competitors. I think they were just above them in the Division 4 power rankings. But yeah, like you said, Phil, a couple changeovers there with graduating girls, but they're still really strong and they have the experience. So I think somewhere right in the middle. I wouldn't be shocked if they won it again. I definitely think they'll make a deep run regardless.
Very good, very good. Yeah, a lot of scores. I think they won three consecutive 3-2 matches at one time last week, which, some of those scores last year were 4-1, 5-0, but
Right.
some closer matches, but hey, still a bagel on the side of the losses, and so still quite potentially
Yeah, win's a
able
win.
to do it there. So let me throw at you a pair. Now this is going to be both. So in order, this is going to be the odds that both of these teams will win. It's St. John's Prep, boys lacrosse, and tennis. We're going to put them together for the purposes of our exercises.
Okay, so we're not picking 2 different ones. We're picking just one number.
So if you think they're both going to win, you can put them number one. If you think one of them will probably lose, maybe you put them number four.
Okay. I'll go number 3. I think I have 3 available, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I'll go number three. Um, can they both win? Yeah, of course. They're probably both favored to win. But banking on two to win might be a little tough. I certainly have a better read on the lacrosse, and while I think they are the favorite, they don't have a go-to scorer. They don't have a Jimmy Ayers. They don't have a Jake Vanna. They don't have a Tommy Sarni that they've had in the past. That probably would have been Drew Bossy, but he was injured and he missed the he's going to miss the season. They have a lot of guys who can score, whether it's the McCarthy brothers, whether it's Josh Harmon, whether it's Luke Kelly, whether it's Beckett Lee, and on and on and on. I mean, so they got tons of spread out offense. Um, but who's going to get that goal when you need one, when you're down 10-9 in the fourth quarter? I don't know. I mean, I'm sure they'll get it, but who's the guy that's going to be doing it? And, the recent injury to Max Putney in goal. I mean, they play four goalies, but he and Mateus Duplessis are kind of the 1 and 1A of that group. And Max is going to be out for 5 or 6 weeks now with an injury. Not that Mateus and Austin Kitsis can't get the job done. I fully expect they will, but there's maybe just something not as guaranteed as in the past. So I'm feeling good at three.
Well, this is a tough one for me. I don't know a ton about the boys tennis team. I know that they're undefeated and super talented and have some guys coming back in key spots from last year. And tennis is interesting. You get to the playoffs and usually these teams have a pretty good idea of what matches they're going to win and what matches are going to be really tight in a toss-up, depending on which individual or doubles team plays better. So I think they're going to have a pretty good idea going into the tournament about some of the teams that they'll handle pretty easily. And then once you get deeper, they're going to have some tougher matchups. And then in terms of the lacrosse, I'd like to, like you said, Phil, think they're the favorite still, but I don't know, to have two teams do it back to back from the same school, that's a tall task. I mean, a lot can happen in the playoffs. So I got one, two, and four left, and I guess I'll put them at number four, which could screw me for these last two, but we'll see.
All right, let's go next. Your Boston Celtics.
That's an easy one for me. I think they're still the team to beat. I think they've proven in round one that they can win in a variety of ways. I mean, they closed out the Magic last night in five without hitting a single three in the first half, and that's usually their MO. It's a close game at half. They opened it up in the third quarter. Real physical series. They showed that they're not going to back down from that kind of challenge, and they just seem more comfortable. I mean, they did this. They beat the Magic without Drew Holiday in a couple games, without Tatum in a game. I just think they're there's some good teams and the talent's probably better across the board in the NBA this year, but I still like them. I like their chances against any opponent.
Yeah, I'm going to put them at four only because I think who number one is going to be, and that would have been my number one when you said what this exercise is going to be. Um, Four, not because I don't think they're going to repeat, I do. But as Nick mentioned, I think it's going to be a little bit tougher road this year. Um, I do wonder, what's Porzingis' health? Is this issue with Tatum going to crop up again? Are they going to run into a team that they can't bully? What if they run into Golden State in the finals and Jimmy Butler? He's been like he's the player in the team that's been their kryptonite in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Can they overcome that? Is it just the Thunder's year? Do the Lakers make a run? Um, could Cleveland or Indiana pull an upset over 7 games? I mean, they could. I don't think any of those things will happen, but they could. So I'm comfortable at four.
I do think they're going to be more worn out by the time they get to the finals if they get to that point, like I expect them to. I think some of these series are going to be a little longer. They only had what, two series that went 5 games last year, one of them
Sound
being
good.
the finals.
Yeah.
So,
I
but
believe.
yeah, a lot of these teams are improved, and the Cavs are not going to be easy, nor would the Pacers be. And like you said, the Thunder in the West, and if the Warriors make a surprise run, that's going to be a very interesting matchup in the finals.
Check out your
I want to say
basketball guy with his knowledge here,
Not
buddy.
bad. Yeah, the Jimmy Butler thing is the real, it's the truth. He is playoff Jimmy, and it's pretty incredible to
I
watch
pay enough
because
attention to know this, you know.
yeah, he just turns it to another level.
23-5 in their last 28 playoff games for whatever that's
Yeah.
worth.
Not
So
bad.
sort of
Not
the
bad.
anti-Florida Panthers in the sense of the fatigue, right? Because they didn't play, like Nick said, they didn't play so many games last year. So hopefully there's more tread on the tires there. So
They're not
uh
exactly the Toronto Maple Leafs in closeout games, that's for sure.
No, I
no,
will
but that,
say
well, but
any
they did have, I mean, they have had their, with the exception of last year, they certainly had problems in closeout games in 2023, in
2010
2022,
against the
in
Lakers.
2021. Like, the 4 years prior to winning the championship, right? They were ahead in some of the series that they went on to lose, right? Ahead in the finals against Golden State, ahead in the conference final against Miami. Then they fall behind to Miami 3-0, come back and then lose game seven. So, if you look under the surface, those duck paddles might be paddling. We'll see if that sort of issues that they used to have sort of crops up if they face some adversity, right? Last year, that it was so easy, they never faced that adversity, so they didn't exactly have to answer those questions. So, sort of
I
interesting.
believe that any West team that they face in the finals is going to be superior to the Mavericks team they faced last year. I feel confident about that.
Almost, I mean, yeah, and I think at this time last year, no one would have probably picked the Mavericks to emerge, right? It
Right.
was all the prognosticators were worried about Denver and then worried about Minnesota. Anthony Edwards was supposed to be the next thing that was going to rip Tatum's face off, and the new Jimmy Butler and this and that didn't work out. Although that's certainly what he's doing to Luka right now. So we'll see. But of course, the last team has to be the New York Liberty of the WNBA. No, I jest. I apologize. The last team will be the regional championship here in New England, the East. This is the odds for them to go to a third straight College World Series. It's Endicott baseball.
Yep, number one. Would they just have a 23 game win streak snap the other day? That's a blip in the road. They just have depth up the wazoo. Pitching for days. Mashing offense. A local guy we can root for, and John Mulready behind the dish from Peabody. A defense that plays virtually error-free ball. Outstanding coaching staff. They're going to be at home straight through. Had a chance to go to their what round was that last year, Willie, with a super regional when they played Johns
Yeah,
Hopkins.
yeah, because ordinarily the regional will be on the road
Yeah, yeah. So I got the
because of
super regional at
graduation they don't
home,
host. Yeah,
and
but
that's great
that's
baseball. I mean, RJ Tolan just has a house over there.
Brian Haley.
Ryan, I'm just Tolan, I'm mixing up hockey. Sorry, Coach. Coach Haley's just got a great thing going over there, and yeah, there we go. Um, so yeah, when you mentioned what this was, it was going to be my number one, and I'm not shaking off of that.
Yeah, I got two left, and I feel good about that. Celtics right at one, and they got baseball too. Yeah, I feel really good about that. Wow, what a remarkable run they're on.
It's pretty good. Yeah. So Phil's got Endicott to go to the College World Series first, Hamilton girls second, St. John's to double up third, Celtics fourth, Panthers of Florida fifth, Nick, Celtics one, Endicott two, Hamilton three, Prep four, Florida five. I almost feel like the first four of all of those are almost a slam dunk. And then hopefully, like Brad Marchand is not watching our podcast and getting upset with us. For going against the Rats down there in Florida. But what can you do? That's the way the cookie crumbles.
Yes, it is. All right, gentlemen, we have children to pick up from school. We're going to head out of here. As always, for Nick Giannino, enjoy your honeymoon, my friend.
Thank you.
And for Matt Williams, I am Phil Stacy. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Follow us on Twitter, read us in the paper, and we'll see you out at the ball games.